Foster, my son, I'm so sorry. Please forgive this worthless mother of yours. Forgive you. Do you really think one cheap apology can erase the 5 years of hell I lived through? 5 years since I sent my own son to prison in place of my stepson. Today was the day my foster was supposed to come out into the world. The ashen sky hung heavy over me, a perfect mirror of my own heart. I sat huddled in the back seat of the top-of-the-line Mercedes sedan my husband Robert Harrison had bought at the start of the year. The air conditioning was a soft, silent caress, but for some reason it felt bone-chillingly cold. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Why did it feel like a funeral? 5 long years had passed, but that fateful day was still seared into my memory. I can still see the look in Foster's eyes as he boarded the transport van. There was no resentment, no hatred, just a deep, profound sadness, a resignation to his fate. My son in the prime of his youth had thrown away his brightest years to carry the weight of another's sin. And the person who forced that sacrifice upon him was me, the very mother who had carried him for 9 months. In the passenger seat, Robert was busy on a business call with a partner, his authoritative voice booming through the car's quiet interior. He was as imposing as ever, seemingly unconcerned that we were on our way to pick up a man just released from prison. To him, Foster was nothing more than a pawn, a piece to be sacrificed to buy peace for the family. He was a line item in a budget. Beside me sat Robert's son Kevin. He had his face buried in a game on his smartphone, letting out a string of curses every time he lost. Seeing him, my heart felt like it was being torn apart all over again. He and Foster were the same age. Why were their fates as different as heaven and earth? One son lived a life of luxury, dressed in designer clothes and wanting for nothing, while the other had to bury his youth behind the cold iron bars of a prison cell. The car sped down the highway, leaving the skyscrapers of the city behind as we headed toward the outskirts toward Blackwood State Penitentiary. The scenery outside the window blurred through my tears. I remembered that horrible night 5 years ago. It was raining cats and dogs. Kevin had stumbled into the house, dead drunk, his face pale and twisted in fear. He confessed trembling that he had caused a major traffic accident. In that moment, Robert lost all composure. He wasn't worried about the victim's well-being. He was terrified of the stain it would put on his business and his reputation. He turned to me, his eyes as cold as ice, and made a cruel proposition. Kevin, he said, was the future of Harrison Industries and could absolutely not go to prison. But Foster was gentle, unassuming, with no real social standing yet. Foster could take the fall. In return, Robert promised me a huge sum of money and a guarantee that he would take care of me for the rest of my life. I cried until I had no tears left, begging him to find another way. But he threatened to throw Foster and me out on the street if I didn't comply. Coward that I was, I wanted to protect the facade of happiness, the comfortable life I had. So I clenched my teeth and nodded. With my own hands, I had destroyed my son's life. I fell to my knees before Foster. Foster, please save your stepbrother. Save your mother. My son looked at me for a long time with empty eyes, then slowly, silently nodded. That simple nod became a recurring nightmare that has tormented me every night for the past 5 years. I am a terrible mother, one who doesn't deserve forgiveness. Just then, Kevin nudged my arm, breaking my train of thought. Mom, what's with the long face? You look like you're going to a funeral. Lighten up, it's his release day. Dad's gonna get pissed if he sees you like that. I forced the corners of my mouth into a smile, but it felt like a twisted grimace. Smile. How could I smile when my heart was a tangled mess of guilt and sorrow? I was terrified to see Foster. I didn't have the courage to look him in the eye. Would he resent me? Or worse, would he not even think of me as his mother anymore? 1,000 questions swirled in my head, tightening their grip around my throat. Robert turned around, his voice sharp with annoyance. Catherine, get a grip. Anyone would think you were in mourning. When you see him, just give him a few bucks and tell him to go start a business somewhere far away. I don't want him anywhere near New York. I won't have him tarnishing my reputation. Besides, Kevin's about to be promoted to branch manager at the bank. If word gets out that he has a convict for a stepbrother, it's all over. Every word was a dagger in my heart. He didn't just not see Foster as a son. He had no shred of human decency for him. To Robert, Foster was just a stain to be erased. I could only manage a week. Yes, dear. Inside, all I wanted was to hold my son, to cook him a warm bowl of his favorite beef stew, and soothe the sorrows of the past years. But I knew I had no right. What more could I ask for living in this false peace I had bought by selling my son? The car turned onto a gravel road, kicking up a cloud of reddish-brown dust. My heart began to pound wildly. We're here! I'm about to see my son again. Foster, I'm so sorry. 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, I'm sorry. Through the window, I saw endless fields stretching out before me. The landscape was green, but somehow desolate. The wind rustling through the cornstalk sounded like someone sobbing. I remembered how Foster used to love the pizza from the shop near his school. He'd always come home with a slice, chattering away about his day as he ate. The sound of his laughter echoing in the sunset was still so clear in my ears, but now that laughter was gone, replaced by a terrifying silence. How had 5 years in prison changed my son? Was he still the sweet, kind boy I knew? Or had the harsh realities of the world turned him into a hardened stranger? Robert ordered the driver to stop in front of the penitentiary's main gate. The massive, imposing steel gate stood before me, a monument to the place that had stolen my son's youth, the place that had witnessed his lonely, desperate nights. With a trembling hand, I opened the car door and stepped out. The harsh sunlight beat down on my head, making me dizzy. Kevin followed, adjusting his sunglasses and straightening the lapels of his suit. He glanced around and muttered, "Ugh, what a dump. This place is in the middle of nowhere." Robert stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mask of indifference like a developer inspecting a construction site. I was the only one whose heart was breaking. I forced my heavy feet toward the administration office. Each step was an act of penance, an agony. Would Foster even want to see me? Or would he turn his back on me? Whatever his reaction, I had to see him. I had to say I was sorry, even though I knew those words could never heal his wounds. The waiting room was a bleak space with just a few worn wooden benches. The musty smell of mildew hit my nose. I perched on the edge of a bench, clasping my sweaty hands together. Robert and Kevin leaned against the wall, their faces openly broadcasting their boredom and irritation. Kevin kept checking his watch. "Geez, what's taking so long, wasting our valuable time?" A moment later, a corrections officer emerged. He glanced at us and asked, "Which inmate are you here for?" I shot to my feet. "Inmate Foster Harrison. I'm his mother. We're here to pick him up. He's being released today." At the mention of Foster's name, the officer's expression hardened. He narrowed his eyes as if trying to recall something. "Please wait a moment. I need to recheck the records." He disappeared back inside, and a terrible sense of foreboding washed over me. Why recheck the records I knew today was his release date? I had counted down every single day. I couldn't be wrong. A mother's intuition screamed that something was terribly wrong. I shot a pleading look at Robert, but he was staring at his phone, oblivious to my rising panic. To him, this was all just a tedious formality. 5 minutes felt like 50 years. Finally, the officer returned, but this time he was accompanied by an older, higher-ranking man. The older man scanned our faces and asked in a low, calm voice, "Who are the family members of Foster Harrison?" I rushed forward. I'm his mother." The older officer looked at me with a solemn expression, a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Please come with me to my office. There's something we need to discuss." My heart plummeted. His office. Had something happened to Foster? My legs felt weak and I nearly collapsed. Kevin steadied me but grumbled. "Seriously, what a pain." Robert's patience finally snapped. "If you have something to say it here. We're busy people. We don't have time for this." But the officer remained firm. "This is an important matter concerning Mr. Harrison. I must insist on your cooperation." His resolute tone left no room for argument. Robert reluctantly followed him into an inner office. It was a small, tidy room. The officer poured us glasses of water and sat down opposite us. He looked me directly in the eye and began to speak his words slow and heavy. "Ma'am, I need you to prepare yourself. Foster Harrison is not here." His words were like a thunderbolt. I stared at him, dumbfounded. "What? What do you mean he's not here? Today is his release date. Did he get into trouble? Was his sentence extended? Is he sick?" 1,000 terrible scenarios flashed through my mind, "Please tell me. Where is my son? He's okay, isn't he?" Even Robert was losing his cool now. He slammed his fist on the desk. "What kind of operation are you running here? What do you mean he's not here? We received an official notice. Do you think we drove all the way out here for fun?" Kevin chimed in. "Yeah, what are you hiding him? Or did he escape?" The older officer was remarkably composed. He gently removed my hand from his arm and gestured for Robert to calm down. He pulled a thick file from a drawer and placed it on the desk. "You misunderstand, Mr. Harrison did not escape, nor was his sentence extended. In fact, he was released 6 months ago." My mouth fell open. I couldn't speak. 6 months ago, how was that possible? His sentence was for 5 years. Why was he released early? And why? Why hadn't he called me? Why hadn't he come home? The officer saw our stunned faces and gave a knowing smile. Mr. Harrison was granted parole for good behavior. More importantly, the case from 5 years ago was reinvestigated. He was exonerated. Exonerated. The word echoed in my head like a giant bell. I froze. If Foster was exonerated, it meant the police knew he wasn't the driver. Which meant they knew who the real driver was. I instinctively looked at Robert and Kevin. Robert's face was ashen, and Kevin was trembling so violently that he dropped his expensive smartphone on the floor. The officer was observing our reactions with a sharp eye. He continued slowly. New evidence came to light, proving his innocence. The specifics are a matter for the investigating agency, so I can't disclose them. What I can tell you for certain is that Foster Harrison was declared not guilty in a court of law and was released immediately. It's been half a year since he walked out of this facility. I sank back into my chair, my head spinning. My son was free. He was cleared of all charges. This should have been the best news of my life, but why was I so terrified? If my son was innocent, then Kevin's guilt and our cover-up was in danger of being exposed. And more importantly, where had Foster been for the last 6 months? What had he been doing? Why hadn't he contacted me? Why this terrifying silence? Robert, struggling to regain his composure, stammered. So, do you know where he went? The officer shook his head with a faint smile. We are only responsible for inmates while they are in our custody. The moment they walk out those gates, they are free citizens. We have no right to track their whereabouts. However, from what I hear, Mr. Harrison has become a very successful man. Successful. A man branded as an ex-convict, even if exonerated. How could he become successful so quickly? The officer's words only made the situation more bizarre and incomprehensible. I looked out the window. The iron gate was still there, cold and secretive. My son had walked through that gate and disappeared into a world I didn't know, leaving his guilty mother behind in a maelstrom of confusion and fear. The air in the warden's office was suffocating. I couldn't wrap my head around what I had just heard. Foster was out and he was a successful businessman. It sounded like something out of a movie. How could my son, who had spent 5 years cut off from society with no college degree and no capital, achieve success so rapidly? Robert, having recovered from his initial shock, reverted to his usual arrogance. He scoffed at the warden. You must be mistaken. What could that boy possibly know how to do? Before he went in, he was a soft-hearted kid who couldn't hurt a fly. He's lucky his record is clean. Successful. He's probably doing manual labor on some construction site. That's a good one. Kevin, sneering, backed his father up. He's right, sir. He's slow. He was always at the bottom of his class, a total coward. Who's going to hire him now? He's probably just hiding in a corner somewhere, too ashamed to show his face. You don't need to sugarcoat it. The warden didn't react to their condescending attitude. He just smiled serenely, took a sip of water, and pulled a folded copy of the Wall Street Journal from his desk. He pushed it across the table toward us. If you don't believe me, perhaps you should see this. It's from last week, an article about one of the city's most remarkable young entrepreneurs. With trembling hands, I picked up the newspaper. The front page of the business section featured a large photograph of a young man in a sharp, tailored suit, shaking hands confidently with international partners. He had changed, weathered by time, but I could never mistake that face, those eyes. It was my son, Foster. But the Foster in the picture was a world away from the gentle, timid boy I remembered. He exuded a cold, powerful charisma. The bold headline struck me like a physical blow. The mysterious Titan Foster Harrison of MJ Group shakes up real estate and finance. I devoured every word of the article. It described him as a phenomenon, a prodigy of investment with bold and precise judgment. His company, MJ Group, had acquired numerous large-scale projects, outmaneuvering established competitors. His personal net worth was estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. I handed the paper to Robert. He squinted as he read it, his face flushing red, then turning deathly pale. His hands began to shake, and he dropped the paper on the floor. Kevin picked it up, and his jaw dropped. He kept rubbing his eyes as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This is impossible," Robert muttered. "How? Where did he get the money?" "The connections. This is absurd. It can't be." He turned on the warden, his voice harsh. Are you absolutely sure this is my son, Foster Harrison? It could just be someone who looks like him. The warden replied calmly, "We maintain meticulous records of our inmates, Mr. Harrison. There is no mistake." Furthermore, before he left, Mr. Harrison left a message to be delivered to his family. He took a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of white paper folded 4 times. Written in a familiar but now sharp and decisive hand was a single line: "What was taken will be reclaimed. With interest. I look forward to our reunion." Reading those words, a chill ran down my spine. My hands and feet went numb, and I dropped the note on the desk. It was undeniably Foster's handwriting, but the message was terrifying. What was taken will be reclaimed. What was he implying? Was this a declaration of revenge? A promise to make us pay for 5 years of a stolen life? Robert snatched the paper, read it, then crumpled it in his fist and threw it in the trash. He growled, "Insolent brat. He dares to threaten me. I'm his father, I raised him, and this is how he repays me. Fine. Let's see what a jailbird with a little cash can do. We'll see how long he lasts when he realizes how the real world works." Kevin, not to be outdone, put on a tough face. "See, Mom, I told you. People like him are ungrateful. Now that he has a little money, he wants to tear his own family apart. Do you still feel sorry for him?" I sat in silence, swallowing my tears. It wasn't out of self-pity, but out of sheer terror for the future. I knew Foster's personality. He was gentle, but once he set his mind to something, he saw it through to the end. His 6 months of silence, his disappearance had all been in preparation for this reunion, and that reunion was a harbinger of a great storm about to break over our family. We left the penitentiary with hearts far heavier and more chaotic than when we had arrived. Robert slammed the car door and yelled at the driver to get back to New York as fast as possible. During the entire ride back, he was constantly on the phone trying to find out everything he could about MJ Group and Foster Harrison. Kevin was silent, but his eyes were filled with a mixture of anxiety and jealousy. I huddled in the corner of the car, watching the world darken outside the window. The image of Foster from the newspaper filled my mind. My son had become successful, a great man. I should have been proud, but why did my chest ache so much? In that moment, I realized I had truly lost him. The kind, filial son I once knew had died on that fateful night. The man who had returned was Foster Harrison, chairman of MJ Group, a cold, ruthless stranger with the fires of vengeance burning in his soul. And the person who had lit that fire was none other than me. The car, carrying 3 people with their own distinct fears and anxieties, sped through the darkness toward a future where a storm was about to break. The luxury sedan tore through the night as if trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere that had enveloped us at the prison. The car was filled only with the monotonous hum of the engine and Robert's irritated sighs. The passing streetlights illuminated my husband's tense, calculating face. He tossed his phone onto the empty seat beside him and turned to me, his eyes sharp as daggers. "Did you know what your precious son was planning, Catherine? Or were the 2 of you in on this together, plotting against us?" I flinched and waved my hands defensively. "How could I know Robert? I swear I found out today just like you. I haven't seen his face or received a single letter in 5 years. How could we have plotted anything?" My voice was weak and trembling, but it was the truth. I knew nothing about Foster's life. Robert snorted with contempt. "Don't play innocent. You're his mother. You know what he's like. How does a punk like that become a chairman? It's obvious. He's a front man, a puppet CEO for some smugglers or loan sharks laundering their money. And you listen to me. If he gets into any legal trouble, don't even think about dragging this family into it. I'm done cleaning up your messes." Kevin, sitting beside me, chimed in with a sneer. "Dad's right. Foster might look harmless, but he's got a dark side. That threatening note proves it. What was taken will be reclaimed. With interest. Seriously, who does he think he is, some action movie hero? He's forgotten who fed him and put clothes on his back. What a backstabbing traitor." Their words were like salt in my wounds. I wanted to scream to defend my son, but my throat was tight and no words would come out. I remembered the old Foster, the kind, sweet boy who would run to the kitchen after school to help me with dinner. The boy who had never raised his voice to anyone. Threats, it was unimaginable. But everything had changed. 5 years in prison had made him a different person, and the cruelty of this family had pushed him down that path. As if to break the grim mood, Robert told the driver to turn up the music, but the loud jazz only made my head spin faster. He turned to Kevin, his voice full of bravado. "Don't worry, son. I've already had my people look into it. This MJ Group, or whatever it's called, is a new company. It has no real foundation. That kid is probably just a figurehead for some powerful backer. To think he'd underestimate me just because he got his hands on some cash. I've been in this game for decades. I've seen it all. We'll see how long he lasts. Kevin's expression relaxed slightly at his father's words. He smirked. You're right, Dad. That's what I think too. Foster barely finished high school and has no experience. How could he run a major corporation? He's just a puppet. They'll probably get rid of him soon and he'll end up on the street. Then he'll come crawling back to Mom, begging for help. I sat in my corner crying silently. It wasn't because of their insults. It was because I finally understood a brutal truth in their eyes. Foster had never been a person. He was just a tool, an obstacle. And I, the woman who gave birth to him, was their accomplice in trampling over his life. It was nearly midnight when the car finally pulled up to our lavish mansion. The grand house loomed before me, but it felt cold and alien. This wasn't a warm home. It was the tomb, where I had buried my conscience and my motherhood. As Robert and Kevin chattered excitedly about upcoming projects and massive profits, I slipped quietly into the house. They had no idea that a storm was coming, a storm that would sweep away everything they held dear. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The image of Foster's cold eyes and his hate-filled words haunted me. I went out onto the balcony and looked out at the city skyline. Countless lights twinkled like stars. Where was my son right now? Was he sleeping peacefully? Or was he like me, lying awake, plotting his revenge? Foster, I'm so sorry. 1,000 times I'm sorry. But it's too late now, isn't it? A week passed. On the surface, the household was calm, but I could feel a sinister tension simmering just beneath. Robert was as busy as ever, and every morning Kevin drove his gleaming sports car to the bank where he was a branch manager. Only I remained trapped in that massive house, trembling with anxiety day after day. That morning it was pouring rain. I was arranging flowers in the living room when the roar of an engine cut through the quiet and Kevin's car skidded into the driveway. I checked the clock. It was only 10 a.m. He usually didn't get home until late at night. What was going on? Kevin stormed into the house, his face a mask of fury. He threw his briefcase onto the sofa and ripped off his tie, flinging it to the floor. His face was flushed and his breath reeked of alcohol. I rushed over to him, alarmed. Kevin, what's wrong? Why are you home so early? Did something happen? He glared at me and yelled, "Shut up. My day is bad enough without having to see your miserable face the second I walk in the door." I froze. He had never been so rude to me. I wasn't his biological mother, but I had raised him since he was a child. Swallowing the lump of sorrow in my throat, I tried again, my voice gentle. "I'm just worried. Can I get you some orange juice? To help with the hangover?" Kevin violently shoved my hand away. The glass I was holding crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. When some of the juice splattered on his suit, he completely lost control. "I was fired," he screamed. "You hear me, I was fired. Those bastards fired me for no good reason." I was stunned. Fired Kevin's performance had been excellent, and he'd only been promoted 3 months ago. How could he be fired so suddenly? I stammered, "Why? What did you do? Was there some kind of misunderstanding?" Kevin tore at his hair, his face a mixture of despair and rage. "Misunderstanding, my ass. The president called me in this morning, said something about restructuring, and handed me a termination letter. But it's obvious someone pulled strings from behind the scenes. He told me I'd gotten on the wrong side of a very powerful person, and the bank was too scared to protect me, afraid of the blowback." On the wrong side of a powerful person, my heart skipped a beat. A single name flashed in my mind. Foster. Had Foster started his revenge on Kevin, a chill ran through my body. If it really was Foster, how powerful had he become? Powerful enough to control the personnel decisions of a major bank. Just then, Robert came home looking just as bewildered as Kevin. He looked from the broken glass on the floor to Kevin, who was holding his head in his hands. "What's going on?" he asked urgently. "I just heard you were fired." "What happened? I tried calling your president, but he won't take my calls." "Did you screw something up?" Kevin looked at his father with bloodshot eyes. "No, Dad. I was just doing my job." Then this. "Dad, you have to help me. You have connections. If I'm fired like this, how can I face anyone?" Robert paced the living room anxiously. He muttered, "This is strange. Very strange. That bank has been a good partner to us for years. Why would they suddenly turn on us? Unless someone with far more power than us is involved." Robert suddenly stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes filled with suspicion. "You've been in contact with Foster, haven't you? This is his doing, isn't it? Tell me the truth." I shook my head violently. I swear I don't know anything. Robert scoffed, then turned to Kevin. Calm down. I'll look into it. Someone is clearly trying to sabotage us. I won't let them get away with it. He tried to sound strong, but I could hear the tremor of fear in his voice. This was the first blow. A powerful warning to our family. And I had a gut feeling that this was just the beginning of the darkness to come. After Kevin was fired, the atmosphere in the house became as heavy as a funeral parlor. Kevin holed up in his room, drinking and breaking things. Robert ran around trying to get his son's job back, but he was rejected at every turn. It was as if an invisible hand was blocking Kevin's every path. Robert's business partners began to avoid him too. Calls went unreturned, and deals that were on the verge of closing were suddenly canceled. I lived in a state of constant terror. I knew deep down that Foster was making good on his threat. He wasn't using violence. He was using his economic power to slowly suffocate us. I had to know the truth. I had to know what my son had become, how he had become so powerful that he could shake the entire city. I snuck into Robert's study and turned on his computer. With trembling hands, I typed MJ Group Foster Harrison Chairman into the search bar. Countless articles and links appeared. The screen showed a gleaming glass skyscraper, the MJ Group logo emblazoned on it with an air of authority. It was their headquarters located in the heart of Manhattan. I clicked on the chairman's bio. There was my son's face, clear and sharp. He was in a black suit staring at the camera with a cold, emotionless expression. His deep-set eyes looked as if they could see right through you. Below the picture was his profile, Foster Harrison, a young, brilliant entrepreneur who returned from abroad with immense capital, quickly dominating the real estate and financial markets and changing the economic landscape of the region. I couldn't believe my eyes. Returned from abroad. It had to be a cover story to hide his criminal record. But who had helped him create such a flawless new identity? Who was backing him? I scrolled down to the comments. Hundreds of people were praising him, hailing him as a self-made hero, a modern success story. No one knew that behind that glittering facade lay a past stained with pain and tears. As I searched, I found an old article from 3 months prior. Real estate mogul Arthur Vance takes in, protege sparks buzz. I clicked on it. A photo showed a kind-faced, middle-aged man with his arm around Foster's shoulders, both of them beaming. The article stated that Arthur Vance, the chairman of Vance Development, had taken Foster Harrison under his wing, essentially adopting him as a son, and entrusting him with the management of several subsidiary companies. The name Vance sounded familiar. Could he be the father of the young woman who was the victim in the accident 5 years ago? Yes. Her name was Clara, the daughter of a real estate tycoon. So Clara had survived, and her family had become Foster's salvation. The irony was staggering. The supposed perpetrator and the victim had become family. Meanwhile, the real culprit, Kevin, had escaped the law only to be judged by his own victim. I sat there, staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. I was happy, but I was also terrified. I was happy that my son had found a benefactor and escaped the mire, but I was terrified because I knew his revenge wouldn't stop at getting Kevin fired. He would seek retribution in a much crueler way. He would try to take back everything we had stolen from him, his honor, his youth, and his faith in his own mother. Just then, I heard footsteps in the hall. I quickly shut down the computer. Robert entered the study, his face worn and desperate. "What are you doing?" he asked. I stammered a lie. "Just dusting your desk." He seemed to believe me and slumped into his chair with a deep sigh. "Catherine, I have a bad feeling about this. The IRS just launched a surprise audit on all my ongoing projects. The banks are calling in my loans. The stock is in freefall. We're heading for bankruptcy." Hearing his words, I felt my blood run cold. Foster had started to move against Robert too. The ghosts of the past had returned, taking the form of a monstrous entity ready to devour our family. I looked at the broken man I had once sacrificed my own son to protect. Should I tell him the truth, or should I leave everything to fate? A fierce conflict raged within me. On one side, my husband. On the other, my son. I had already made the wrong choice once. Did I have the courage to make the right one this time, or would I sink even deeper into this pit of sin? Outside, the sound of the rain felt like the weeping of my own conscience. The days that followed were the darkest of my life as Robert Harrison's wife. Our once glorious mansion was now shrouded in a desperate gloom. The phone rang incessantly, not with invitations and congratulations, but with calls from creditors and notices of contract termination. The sound of the phone became a trigger for my nightmares, each ring a fresh stab of fear. Harrison Industries, Robert's lifelong pride, was on the brink of collapse. One evening, a drunken Robert confessed that all his projects were frozen due to funding and legal issues. Suppliers had cut him off and were demanding immediate payment. The bank had notified him that they were foreclosing on all his assets, including the house we were in. One morning, Robert came downstairs looking like a ghost. He seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. With a shaking hand, he lit a cigarette. "It's over, Catherine," he rasped. "My oldest partner just pulled out. Said he can't do business with a company under investigation." "Who's investigating us?" I asked. Robert laughed, a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. "Who do you think? Your brilliant son. He bought up my partner's shares, turned them against me. He's pushing me off a cliff." My legs gave out from under me, and I nearly collapsed. "Foster, why are you being so cruel? If you want revenge, take it out on me. Why are you trying to destroy this whole family?" But I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud. That afternoon, a group of menacing men covered in tattoos showed up at our gate, shouting for Robert to pay his debts and splashing red paint on our entrance. The neighborhood was thrown into chaos. I locked the doors and hid inside, trembling with fear. Kevin came home late that evening. His car had already been repossessed, so he arrived in a taxi. His clothes were disheveled and his face was bruised. When I cried out in alarm, he pushed me away. "Leave me alone, those thugs caught me." Said it was a warning. "Tell Dad if he doesn't pay up next time, they won't be so gentle." I sank to the floor, sobbing. Our family was completely broken. We had once enjoyed wealth and prestige, but now we were nothing but debtors scorned by society. And behind this whole tragedy was the son I had abandoned. Had the power of money and the thirst for revenge turned Foster into a monster? Was he relishing our misery? Or was his heart bleeding too? As poverty and destitution knocked on our door, what little affection remained in the family vanished. The pressure of bankruptcy and debt brought out the ugliest, most selfish sides of Robert and Kevin. Our once warm family dinners turned into battlegrounds of blame and recrimination. One evening at our meager dinner table, Robert slammed down his chopsticks and unleashed a torrent of abuse at Kevin. "You useless piece of trash. Do you know how much money I spent to get you that branch manager position? And you couldn't even hold on to it. If you'd kept that job, I could have secured some emergency funding. You ruined me." Kevin threw his plate against the wall. "Look who's talking. How did you run your business into the ground? You acted like you were king of the world, and in the end, you get taken down by your wife's son. You're the incompetent one, Dad." Enraged, Robert slapped Kevin hard across the face. Kevin glared back at his father with pure hatred, then turned his fury on me. "It's all her fault, for giving birth to a monster like that. For not raising him right. She's the one who brought this disaster on us. You're a curse on this family, get out." I stood frozen between the two men I had loved and dedicated my life to. In their eyes, I was no longer a wife or a mother. I was just a shield they had used to cover their mistakes and sins. Now that the shield was useless, they were ready to cast me aside without a second thought. Robert swept everything off the table. "Are you just going to stand there crying?" he roared at me. "Get on the phone, call that bastard, Foster. You're his mother. Go to him, beg, get on your knees and plead with him to save us. If you come back empty-handed, I don't know what I'll do to you." I knelt to pick up the broken pieces of porcelain. I cut my hand on a shard, but I didn't feel the pain. The wound in my heart was far deeper. What was left for me in this cold, empty house? That night, huddled in my room, I listened to the sounds of Robert and Kevin fighting in the living room. I yearned for peace. I longed to hear Foster's voice calling me Mom again like he used to, but that small wish felt impossibly distant. Our family was broken beyond repair. Just as the family was sinking into a pit of despair, something unexpected happened. A luxury courier service pulled up to the house. The delivery man handed me an opulent envelope with a gold-embossed logo. The recipient was addressed to Mrs. Catherine Wallace. My hands trembled. It was from Foster. After all these years, something addressed not to my husband or stepson, but only to me. I opened the envelope. A beautifully crafted invitation smelling of expensive perfume was inside. "Mrs. Catherine Wallace is cordially invited to celebrate the 5th anniversary of MJ Group and the launch of the Sunflower Charity Foundation." I read the words over and over. Foster was inviting me to a party. Why? To flaunt his success? To humiliate me in front of everyone? Or was there deep in his heart a small ember of affection left for his sinful mother, the Sunflower Charity Foundation? The name made me catch my breath. Years ago, I used to grow sunflowers in our garden, and Foster loved them. He used to say they represented faith and hope because they always faced the sun. Was my son trying to send me a message? Robert and Kevin snatched the invitation from my hands. Robert's eyes gleamed with greed. This is our chance. The fact that he invited you means he still cares. You have to go. Cry, beg, tell him what we're going through. You're his mother. He can't just turn his back on you. Kevin added, That's right, Mom. Wear your nicest dress, do your makeup. Go and play the tragic heroine. Rich guys like him care about appearances. He won't let his own mother look pathetic. If you play your cards right, you could get a lot of money out of him. I looked at them with disgust. Even in this situation, all they could think about was money. They were trying to use me again. I snatched the invitation back. I'll go, I said firmly, but not to beg for money for you. I'm going to see my son, to look him in the eye and tell him I'm sorry. I don't care if he hits me or yells at me or throws me out. Robert sneered. Fine, whatever. Just bring back the money. Don't even think about coming back empty-handed. On the day of the party, I searched my closet, but I had nothing suitable to wear. All my fancy clothes had been sold off months ago to pay for living expenses. I finally pulled out an old velvet dress more than a decade old. It was a little loose on my gaunt frame, but it was the most decent thing I owned. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was streaked with gray, my face etched with worry lines. I applied a little lipstick to my pale face, but it couldn't hide the sadness in my eyes. Will Foster even recognize me, I wondered? Or will I just be a pathetic traitor in his eyes? I took a taxi to the venue. The National Convention Center was dazzling, decorated with brilliant lights and extravagant floral arrangements. A line of luxury cars dropped off elegantly dressed men and women who mingled and laughed. As I stepped out of the taxi, I felt small and out of place in this glittering world. Clutching the invitation, I took a deep breath and walked inside. My heart was pounding. I'm about to see my son. I have to face my past, my sin. Whatever happened tonight, I had to see Foster. It was a command from my mother's heart, the most fervent wish of my remaining life. As the doors to the ballroom opened, I stepped into the brilliant light, carrying the weight of 1,000 regrets. The moment I entered the convention center's grand hall, I was overwhelmed by the breathtaking opulence. Thousands of crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like giant teardrops, and the marble floor reflected the images of the elegant guests like a mirror. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and lilies, creating an aristocratic atmosphere I had never experienced before. I quickly found a shadowy corner to hide in. In my faded old velvet dress, I felt like a decrepit crow in a flock of magnificent peacocks. The women around me were all adorned in shimmering gowns and diamond jewelry, their laughter tinkling like wind chimes. Their curious and pitying glances made me want to disappear. This was not my world. An orchestra on stage played classical music, which helped to soothe my frayed nerves. I searched the crowd for my son's face. Where is the little boy who used to cling to my skirt? Where is the gaunt young man with sad eyes who boarded that transport van? I couldn't find him. Then a murmur rippled through the crowd, and all eyes turned to the main entrance. The massive doors swung open, and a man entered to a round of enthusiastic applause. My heart stopped. It was Foster, but he was no longer the son I knew. The man walking down that red carpet exuded an unfamiliar aura of power and commanding grace. A perfectly tailored black suit hair slicked back immaculately, and a cool, solemn expression. He was undeniably handsome, but he looked just as cold. I stood, rooted to the spot, clenching the fabric of my dress to keep from crying out. Is that my son? He had changed so much. He was more successful than I could have imagined and more distant. At his side was a beautiful woman in a stunning white gown. She held his arm, looking up at him with eyes full of love and admiration. They were, by all accounts, a perfect couple. As Foster moved through the crowd, he offered brief, curt nods to important partners. His every step was confident without a hint of hesitation. I wanted to run to him to throw my arms around him, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The dazzling aura he projected felt like it would burn me. I was terrified that my shabby appearance would embarrass him in front of all these people. All I could do was stand there and watch my brilliant son from afar. When Foster took the microphone and stepped onto the stage, the noisy hall fell silent. His low, powerful voice filled the room. He thanked his honored guests and then spoke about why he had founded the Sunflower Charity Foundation. He wanted to help people in need, he said, people who wanted a second chance to get back on their feet, just like the sunflowers that always turn their heads toward the sun. Every word he spoke was a new pang in my heart. He hadn't lost that kind heart of his. He remembered the flower that we both used to love. A faint spark of hope flickered to life within me. Maybe my son hadn't forgotten me completely. Maybe he was waiting for me to approach him to apologize. I wiped my tears and resolved to speak to him after the event. I had no idea that what was about to happen would shatter my heart and cruelly crush that fledgling hope. After the speech, the party's atmosphere became even more festive. People raised their glasses in toasts, laughing and chatting. Then a female MC approached Foster with a question. Mr. Harrison, what would you say was the driving force behind your incredible success at such a young age? Was it perhaps the strong support of your family? The question silenced the room again. Everyone was curious about the mysterious background of this young tycoon. I held my breath, waiting for my son's answer. What would he say about his family? About me? Would he acknowledge me as his mother? Or would he deny me? Foster smiled an unreadable smile. He took the microphone and scanned the audience. His gaze paused for a fraction of a second on the dark corner where I was standing. For that brief moment our eyes met. My heart lurched. He saw me. I know he saw me. But his eyes were so cold, so alien. There was no emotion in them at all. Not love, not even hate. It was the indifferent look one might give a stone on the side of the road. He spoke slowly and clearly. Thank you for the question. The truth is, I don't have a family. I'm an orphan. I'm an orphan. The words pierced my heart like a shard of ice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. An orphan, I was standing right here. The mother who carried him for 9 months, who raised him, was right here. How could he deny me so cruelly? Foster continued in a terrifyingly calm voice. My parents passed away a long time ago. To be precise, they died in my heart the day I set out on my own path. I grew up amidst loneliness and betrayal. Life's cruelty taught me that I had to become strong, or I would be crushed. So the success I have today is due entirely to my own efforts and the help of benefactors to whom I share no blood. It has nothing to do with any so-called family. The hall erupted in applause, moved by his story of resilience. They didn't know that in a dark corner a mother was crumbling in agony. I could no longer stand on my own. I gripped the edge of a table to keep from collapsing. Tears streamed down my face, ruining my clumsy makeup. He had said I was dead. In his heart, I was already a dead person. He didn't hate me. He considered me non-existent. This denial was more painful than 1,000 insults. He would rather call himself an orphan than admit he had a mother as terrible as me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run onto that stage and yell, "I'm your mother," but I couldn't. I had no right. How could I, the woman who had effectively killed her own son 5 years ago, now claim the title of mother? The pain in my chest was unbearable. The music, the laughter around me, all of it faded into a distant hum. The only sound I could hear was my own heart shattering into a million pieces. I wanted to run to escape this place, but I couldn't. There was still something I had to do. I had to see him. Even if he denied me, even if he disowned me, I had to tell him I was sorry. It was the only thing I could do for him now. Steeling myself, I wiped my tears. And I waited for the next stage of my punishment. As the party wound down, guests began to leave. Just then, a man in a black suit approached me. He bowed his head respectfully. "The chairman would like to see you now. Please follow me." My heart hammered against my ribs. This is it. Foster wanted to see me. I followed the assistant down a long, quiet corridor. He stopped in front of a massive, intricately carved wooden door and ushered me inside. It was a spacious and luxurious office. Foster was standing by the window looking out at the city lights. His back looked so lonely and cold. The door closed and a heavy silence filled the room. I didn't know what to say. After a long moment, Foster slowly turned around. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit," he said coldly. There was no mom, no emotion, just the cold metallic clang of his voice. I perched on the edge of the chair, unable to meet his gaze. His sharp eyes felt like they were boring into my very soul. Unable to bear the silence any longer, I looked up, tears streaming down my face. "Foster, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive this worthless mother of yours." Foster let out a bitter laugh. "Forgive you? Do you really think one cheap apology can erase the 5 years of hell I lived through? Do you have any idea what it was like in there? Do you know what it feels like to be abandoned by your own mother?" I sobbed, I know, and I regretted it every single night. I prayed every day that you would be safe." Foster slammed his fist on the desk. "Stop it," prayed. "Did you pray for me? Or did you pray to ease your own guilty conscience? Why did you come here tonight? To beg for your pathetic family? Or to put on some dramatic mother-son reunion?" I shook my head frantically. No, that's not it. I just wanted to see you. I don't need money. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Foster walked toward me, his eyes burning with hatred. He looked down at me. You want to know how I'm doing? I'm doing great. 1,000 times better than when I was living under your roof, walking on eggshells. I have money. I have power. The only thing I don't have is faith in people, which you took from me. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. His voice was menacing. Go back and tell your precious husband and son that the game has just begun. I will take back everything that belongs to me, and I will repay those who made me suffer 100, 1,000 times over. And you will watch as the family you sacrificed your own son to protect is torn apart, piece by piece. I trembled with fear. My son had truly become an angel of vengeance. I fell to my knees at his feet, pleading, Foster, please, direct all your anger at me. Please don't hurt anyone else. Stop this. He coldly pushed my hand away. Don't touch me. You'll get my suit dirty. Go home, and don't ever appear before me again. I have no mother. My mother died a long time ago. He called for his security and I was dragged out of the room half-conscious with grief. As the door slammed shut, all my hope vanished. My son was no longer my son, and I knew with a chilling certainty that this tragedy would continue forever unless a miracle occurred. I stumbled out of that opulent room like a ghost, my soul completely hollowed out. The long, red-carpeted hallway felt like a path to hell. Foster had cast me out, erased me from his life forever. I didn't blame him. I couldn't. I was the one who had planted the seeds of all this pain. I wandered aimlessly down the empty corridor. Then I heard urgent footsteps behind me. Ma'am, please wait. I turned to see the young assistant who had led me to Foster. He was out of breath. He approached me and held out a small black wooden box. The chairman asked me to give you this. He said it was the only thing left from his past, and he wanted to return it to its rightful owner. With trembling hands, I took the box. I opened the lid. On a bed of red velvet lay a single small object, an old, faded white plastic button, its paint chipped and worn. The moment I saw it, the tears I had been holding back burst forth like a flood. The horrific memories of 5 years ago resurfaced, squeezing my heart. How could I ever forget this button? It was from the white shirt Foster had been wearing on that fateful night. The night I had clung to his legs, begging him to take the blame for Kevin. As I grabbed and pulled at him, the button had popped off and fallen to the floor. I had picked it up and clutched it in my hand, but in the chaos, I had no memory of what happened to it. But Foster had found it. He had kept this cheap plastic button for 5 long years. Through prison and until this very day. Why? To never forget the moment his own mother betrayed him. To symbolize how our bond had been violently torn apart, just like the button from his shirt. By returning it to me, he was telling me that it was all over. He no longer wanted to hold on to this painful relic of the past. I clutched the box to my chest and wept. Foster, why? Why did you hold on to this pain for so long, torturing yourself? Why couldn't you just forget and be happy? The assistant watched me with a pained expression. Then he pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. He handed it to me, his face even more solemn. This is the second item the chairman wanted me to give you. He said that he is a businessman, and businessmen settle all accounts fairly. Especially, he said, the debt of his own birth. Inside the envelope was a stack of legal documents and a check. The number written on the check made my head spin $10 million. But what took my breath away was the title on the document, Agreement of Severance of Relations and Reimbursement of Child-Rearing Costs. Foster was trying to sever our mother-son bond with money. He was trying to pay off the cost of my giving birth to and raising him to become both legally and morally a complete stranger. The assistant explained, the chairman said this money would be enough for you to pay off all your debts, save your husband's company, and live the rest of your life in comfort. In return, you must sign this agreement and never appear before him again. I couldn't hear. In my son's eyes, what was I? Did he really think money could solve everything? Did he believe $10 million could compensate for his 5 years in prison for my shattered conscience? I let out a bitter laugh. In the end, he saw me as nothing more than a beggar who had come for money. So he was throwing cash at me and telling me to get lost. The humiliation was worse than death. I wanted to rip the check to shreds and scream that I didn't need money, I needed my son. But then I thought of our debt-ridden home, my desperate husband, the threats from the loan sharks. I was suffocating, caught between my pride and the brutal reality. In the end, I didn't sign the agreement, but I took the check. I looked at the assistant and said, "Tell him I'll take the money. Not because I want it, but to give him peace of mind. If he believes he can sever blood ties with money, then I'll let him believe it. But I will not sign this paper. The bond between a parent and child is not a contract that can be torn up. The assistant looked surprised, yet sympathetic. He nodded. The chairman anticipated you wouldn't sign, ma'am. He just wanted to make his intentions clear. I put the check and the button box in my purse. I felt utterly pathetic, having once again succumbed to the power of money. Just then, the assistant leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Ma'am, there's something you should know. The chairman told me to keep this a secret, but seeing you in so much pain, knowing the truth may hurt more, but I believe it's better than being deceived for the rest of your life. I looked at him, my heart pounding with a new dread. The truth. He glanced around, then whispered in my ear. That accident 5 years ago? You think it was just a simple DUI, don't you? You're wrong. That night, Kevin was on a secret mission for his father. There was a woman in the car with him, Clara Vance, the daughter of the real estate mogul. Kevin had drugged her at a bar and was taking her to a hotel to present her to one of Mr. Harrison's business partners. My jaw dropped. Drugged her. For a business partner, my husband and stepson weren't just selfish. They were monstrous criminals. The assistant continued. The accident happened because Miss Vance woke up sooner than expected, realized she was being kidnapped, and fought back. That's when Kevin lost control of the car and hit the truck. Kidnapping and attempted sexual assault carry much heavier sentences than a DUI. That's why Robert was so desperate to have Foster take the fall. They used Foster's love for you and your own ignorance to cover up a heinous crime. The victim, Miss Vance, miraculously survived. Her family uncovered the truth and helped Foster. He paused. The woman who was with Foster at the party tonight, that was Clara Vance. I collapsed right there in the hallway, sobbing without a sound. I had sided with demons. I had sent my good, innocent son to prison to protect vile criminals. I was disgusted with myself, with the family I had devoted my life to. A new feeling began to bubble up through the grief rage. Robert, Kevin, you lied to me. You used me like a puppet. I won't let you get away with this. I wiped my tears and stood up, my eyes burning with a desire for justice. I hailed a taxi. I wasn't going home to weep anymore. I was going back to confront them, to set things right. Foster, your mother was wrong. But this time I won't be. I will clear your name. I will do it even if it costs me my life. The taxi stopped in front of the familiar mansion, which now felt like a devil's lair. Prepared to lose everything, I walked inside. Robert and Kevin were on the sofa waiting for me. The moment they saw me, their eyes lit up with greed. Robert rushed over, grabbing my shoulders. What happened? How much did you get? I shoved his hands off me and threw my purse on the table. There's your money, I said, my voice like ice. $10 million. It should be enough to cover your debts. At the mention of $10 million, the two of them went wild with joy, rummaging through the purse to find the check. Kevin kissed it, exclaiming, We're saved, Dad. $10 million, we should have had her ask for more. Robert glanced at the severance agreement and smirked. He wants to cut ties. Fine by me. With this money, who needs him? Sign it, Catherine. Seeing their grotesque display, I screamed, Is money all you think about? Don't you realize this is my son's blood and tears? Robert yelled back, Don't give me that crap. A few years in jail for this kind of payout, it's a good deal. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to Kevin. Tell me, who was in the car with you that night? What did you do? Kevin's face went white. Robert stepped in and slapped me so hard I fell to the floor. He snarled, All right, I told him to do it. So what if I hadn't? We wouldn't be living this life. Foster isn't my blood. It's only natural he should sacrifice for his brother. I finally realized that the man I had called my husband for 20 years was a monster. I cried out in despair. I'm going to the police. I'll tell the world what you really are. Robert laughed. With what proof? Who's going to believe a hysterical woman like you? And don't forget, Catherine, you're an accomplice. You'll go to jail right along with us. So shut up and let us handle the money. He took the check and went upstairs with Kevin. I was left alone in the cold, dark living room. His threat meant nothing. I had nothing left to lose. Just you wait, I thought. You will pay for every single one of my son's tears. The next morning, before dawn, I left that hellish house. I left the $10 million check on the table. I wouldn't taint my soul with their dirty money. I was sitting on a park bench numb when a white luxury sedan pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down to reveal Clara Vance's beautiful face. Get in, Mrs. Wallace. We need to talk. In the car, Clara was quiet. She took me to a secluded cafe. Taking my hand, she said, I don't blame you. I know you were a victim too. Foster told me everything. He told me how much you loved him when he was a child. At the mention of Foster, I started crying again. He must still hate me so much. Clara looked out the window. He doesn't hate you. He's in too much pain. The wound is so deep that he's wearing armor made of thorns to protect himself. He pushed you away because he's terrified of being hurt again. Clara told me about that terrible night 5 years ago. And she told me what Foster had said to her father from prison. He got on his knees and begged my father. He said he didn't care about going to prison, but he pleaded with my dad to protect you, his mother. He said you wouldn't be able to handle it if you saw the family fall apart. My heart broke. My son. My foolish son. He had tried to protect me even as he was sacrificing himself, and What do I do now? I asked Clara. I want to atone, even if it means giving up my life. Clara looked me straight in the eye. Don't die. Live. Live to expose their crimes and clear Foster's name. Only when they face justice can Foster's wounds begin to heal. Can you do that? I wiped my tears and nodded firmly. I can. I will. That night, Clara gave me a worn journal that Foster had kept in prison. On the first page, stained with tear marks, was his writing, "Mom, I miss you. I miss your beef stew. I don't blame you. As long as you are safe, I'm okay." I turned the pages, my breath catching in my throat. My son's hopeful words gradually turned to despair and then to hatred. The last entry read, "Clara's father told me the truth today. Mom, how could you do this to me? You are no longer my mother. I will get out of here alive, and I will make every person who destroyed my life pay. What was taken will be reclaimed." With interest, I clutched the journal and wailed. I had killed the hope and love in my son's heart. I decided to go back to the house the next day to find evidence, to bring them to justice with my own hands. It was the only way I could atone for my sins. In the middle of the day, I returned to the mansion. The two of them were still sleeping off the previous night's drunken celebrations. I snuck into Robert's study to find the secret safe I knew he must have. He was too paranoid and meticulous to discard important evidence. I had a hunch it was hidden behind the large painting behind his desk. In the dead of night, I returned to the study and moved the heavy painting. As I suspected, there was a safe embedded in the wall. I didn't know the combination. I thought desperately about what numbers would be most important to him. Then it hit me, the date he landed his first major contract, the day that launched his empire. With trembling fingers, I entered the date. With a soft click, the safe door swung open. Inside, along with stacks of cash, were a black ledger and a small USB drive. It was all the proof I needed. I hid them on my person and slipped out of that hellish house before sunrise. I went straight to the police station. In the interrogation room, I placed all the evidence on the table. I spoke calmly. "I am here to report the crimes of my husband, Robert Harrison, and my stepson, Kevin Harrison. And I am here to confess my own crime in covering up for them." When the files on the USB were played, recordings of Robert's bribery deals and the horrifying black box footage from the car on the night of the accident, the air in the room froze. The evidence was irrefutable. That night, the police raided the Harrison mansion. Robert and Kevin were arrested on the spot, caught counting the $10 million check. I was there with the police. When Robert saw me, he screamed, "You crazy bitch, you betrayed me." I looked him in the eye. "This isn't betrayal. It's what I should have done 5 years ago. You're just reaping what you sowed." Kevin collapsed on the floor, clinging to my legs. "Mom, save me. I don't want to go to prison." "It's too late," I said coldly. "You should have thought of that when you were ruining someone else's life." They were handcuffed and led away. I was escorted to a different police car to be taken to a holding cell. Through the car window, I saw Foster standing by his black sedan in the distance. The hatred was gone from his eyes. There was only a deep sadness and a look of pity. I shed a final tear and managed a small smile in his direction. "Goodbye, my son. I'm going to pay for my sins now. You must be happy." On the day of the trial, it rained as if the sky itself was trying to wash away all the filth. Dressed in a prison jumpsuit, I stood in the defendant's box and calmly admitted my guilt. Beside me stood a despairing Robert and a broken Kevin. The judge read out their long list of heinous crimes and finally delivered the verdict. Robert was sentenced to 20 years in prison, Kevin to 15. They collapsed and sobbed in the courtroom, but it was too late. For my role in the cover-up and my cooperation with the investigation, I was sentenced to 5 years. I accepted the verdict with a grateful heart. The heavy burden on my soul was finally lifted. The 5 years in prison were not easy, but my heart was more peaceful than it had ever been. I found true repentance and peace there. Clara visited me sometimes, bringing news from the outside world. Foster's company had grown even larger, and he had established a charitable foundation in my maiden name to help those in need. Hearing that, I cried tears of joy. My son was remembering me in his own way. Time passed. My hair turned white, my eyesight grew dim, but my mind was at peace. Finally, the day of my release came. Standing outside the prison gates for the first time in 5 years, the sky was a brilliant, piercing blue. I stood there holding a single worn bag when a familiar black sedan pulled up. The door opened and Foster and Clara got out. Foster looked so much more mature. He walked up to me and just looked at me for a long time. Then in a trembling voice he said, "Mom." That one word unleashed all the pain and longing of the past years, and I broke down. I threw my arms around my son and cried endlessly. Foster's strong arms held my frail body a warm and steady presence. "Mom," he said gently, "let's go home." Foster drove, taking me out of the city and onto a quiet country road flanked by green fields and meadows. The car stopped in front of a small, beautiful house on a gentle hill. The yard was filled with my favorite flowers and a whole garden of sunflowers, their faces turned toward the sun. I was speechless. Foster had remembered the life I had always dreamed of. "Mom," he said, "the wounds of the past are too deep. I think living together might be too painful for both of us right now. So I prepared this place just for you. Clara and I will visit every weekend with our child. We're going to be parents soon." Overcome with happiness, I began to cry again. I was going to be a grandmother. Heaven had finally granted me its blessing. From then on, I lived a second life in that peaceful house. I tended my garden, read books, and cherished the visits from my son, his wife, and eventually my grandchild. One evening, as the sun was setting, Foster and I sat on the porch watching the sky turn orange and pink. I stroked his hair. "Thank you, my son. Thank you for forgiving this worthless mother, for giving me this peace." Foster took my hand. "Let the past go, Mom. We have to live in the present for the future. Just stay with us healthy and happy for a long, long time." For the first time in my life, a truly peaceful smile bloomed from the depths of my heart. Darkness had fallen, but in my soul, a brilliant new morning was dawning. This story shows us the universal law of cause and effect and the great power of forgiveness. Greed and selfishness ultimately lead to ruin, but sincere repentance and forgiveness can heal any wound and offer the gift of a new life. May a warm sunflower of love and forgiveness bloom in all our hearts.